The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This book is about shifting the way you live and work from reacting to life to consciously shaping it. At its core, it teaches that effectiveness is not a set of quick tricks, but a way of thinking and acting that aligns your character with timeless principles like responsibility, integrity, and cooperation. The 7 habits are not meant to be rushed. They build on each other, starting from the inside and moving outward into relationships and leadership. The first big idea is personal responsibility. Covey explains that effective people are proactive. This means they do not blame circumstances, other people, or their past for how they feel or act. Instead, they recognize that between what happens to them and how they respond, there is a space. In that space lies choice. When you learn to pause, reflect, and choose your response, you regain control over your life. This habit alone can change how you handle stress, conflict, and setbacks because it reminds you that your power lies in your decisions, not in external events. The next shift is about direction. Many people are busy every day but still feel lost. Covey invites you to define what truly matters before life forces decisions on you. By imagining the kind of person you want to be and the values you want to live by, you create an inner compass. This habit is about clarity. When you know your priorities, you stop drifting. You begin to make choices based on meaning rather than urgency, which brings a sense of purpose and calm. Once direction is clear, action becomes more focused. Covey emphasizes that effective people put first things first. This means learning to manage yourself, not time. Instead of constantly reacting to emergencies, you intentionally make space for what is important but not urgent, such as relationships, personal growth, planning, and health. Over time, this habit reduces chaos and increases balance. Life feels less like constant firefighting and more like steady progress. After these inner habits, the book moves into relationships. Covey explains that success is not just about personal achievement, but about how well you work with others. One key idea here is thinking in terms of mutual benefit. Instead of seeing life as a competition where one person wins and another loses, effective people seek solutions where everyone can gain. This mindset builds trust and long-term cooperation. It transforms conflict from a threat into an opportunity for creative problem solving. Communication plays a central role in healthy relationships. Covey teaches that most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. Effective people reverse this. They listen deeply, with empathy, trying to truly see the world from the other person's perspective before expressing their own view. This habit does not mean agreeing with everyone. It means understanding first. When people feel heard, defenses lower, and genuine dialogue becomes possible. The book then introduces the idea of synergy. When people with different strengths, perspectives, and experiences collaborate with trust and openness, the result can be greater than what any individual could achieve alone. Synergy is not about compromise, where everyone gives up something. It is about creating new solutions that did not exist before. This habit encourages you to value differences instead of fearing them, seeing diversity as a source of creativity rather than conflict. Finally, Covey reminds readers that effectiveness is not a destination, but an ongoing process. The last habit is about renewal. Just as tools need maintenance, people need regular renewal of body, mind, heart, and spirit. This includes rest, learning, reflection, exercise, and meaningful connection. Without renewal, even the best habits wear down. With it, growth becomes sustainable and life feels more balanced and alive. Overall, this book teaches that real change starts from within. By aligning your actions with clear values, building strong relationships, and continuously renewing yourself, effectiveness becomes a natural outcome, not a forced effort. It is less about doing more and more about becoming someone who lives with intention, integrity, and cooperation. Atomic Habits: An Easy and Proven Way to Build Good Habits and Break Bad Ones by James Clear. This book focuses on the idea that meaningful change does not come from dramatic transformations, but from small, consistent actions repeated over time. It teaches that habits are the invisible architecture of daily life. What you do every day, even in tiny ways, shapes who you become. Instead of chasing motivation or willpower, the book explains how to design your environment and systems so that good habits become easier and bad habits become harder. A key concept is that habits are not about goals, but about systems. Goals define where you want to go, but systems determine whether you get there. Many people set ambitious goals and feel discouraged when progress is slow. The book suggests shifting focus from outcomes to identity. Rather than saying, "I want to run a marathon," you think, "I'm becoming a runner." Each small habit is a vote for the type of person you want to be. Over time, these votes build a new identity that feels natural instead of forced. The book breaks habits down into a simple 4-step loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. Every habit follows this cycle. A cue triggers the brain to initiate a behavior. A craving provides motivation. The response is the action you take. The reward satisfies the craving and teaches the brain whether the habit is worth remembering. Understanding this loop allows you to change habits with precision instead of self-judgment. You stop blaming yourself and start adjusting the process. To build good habits, the book introduces 4 practical laws. First, make it obvious. When a habit is visible and clear, it is easier to start. This might mean placing a book on your pillow if you want to read more, or keeping healthy food in sight. Second, make it attractive. Habits stick when they feel rewarding. Pairing a habit you want with something you enjoy increases motivation. Third, make it easy. Reducing friction is crucial. If a habit takes too much effort, it will not last. Starting small, sometimes ridiculously small, is a strength, not a weakness. Fourth, make it satisfying. Immediate rewards help the brain lock in behavior, even if the long-term benefits come later. Breaking bad habits follows the same logic, but in reverse. Make the habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Remove cues from your environment. Reframe the habit by focusing on its negative effects. Increase the effort required to perform it. Add consequences that make the habit less appealing. This approach removes the need for constant self-control and replaces it with smart design. Another powerful idea in the book is the concept of the plateau of latent potential. Progress often feels slow because results lag behind effort. You may practice a habit for weeks without seeing visible change, which can be discouraging. The book explains that habits work like compound interest. Small improvements accumulate quietly until a breakthrough occurs. Understanding this helps you stay consistent even when results are not immediately visible. The book also emphasizes the importance of environment over motivation. People often assume that successful individuals have more discipline. In reality, they usually have better systems. By shaping your surroundings, you shape your behavior. This includes social environments as well. Being around people who already live the habits you want to adopt makes change feel normal and achievable. Finally, the book reminds readers that perfection is not the goal. Missing a habit once is not a failure. The real danger is missing twice. Getting back on track quickly preserves identity and momentum. Long-term success comes from consistency, not intensity. Overall, this book offers a calm and practical roadmap for personal growth. It replaces pressure with patience and self-blame with understanding. By focusing on small, repeatable actions and aligning habits with identity, change becomes sustainable and empowering. Mindset: The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck. This book explores how the way you think about yourself shapes almost every area of your life. It introduces a simple but powerful idea. People tend to operate from one of 2 mindsets, often without realizing it. These mindsets influence how you handle challenges, failure, effort, feedback, relationships, and success. By becoming aware of them, you gain the ability to change how you learn, grow, and respond to life. One mindset is based on the belief that abilities are fixed. In this way of thinking, intelligence, talent, and personality are seen as things you are born with and cannot significantly change. When people live from this mindset, They often feel the need to constantly prove themselves. Success becomes a way to validate worth, and failure feels like a personal judgment. Challenges are avoided because they risk exposing weakness. Effort is seen as a sign of inadequacy, and criticism is taken as an attack rather than information. The other mindset is based on the belief that abilities can be developed. This does not mean that everyone starts from the same place, but it means that growth is always possible through effort, strategies, and learning. In this mindset, challenges are welcomed because they are opportunities to grow. Failure is not a verdict, but feedback. Effort is not embarrassing, it is essential. People with this mindset are more resilient, more curious, and more willing to improve over time. The book explains that mindset shapes behavior from a very early age. Praise, feedback, and expectations all play a role in reinforcing one mindset or the other. When children are praised only for being smart or talented, they may become afraid to try difficult things. They learn to protect their image instead of expanding their abilities. When they are praised for effort, strategies, and persistence, they learn that growth comes from trying, learning, and adjusting. This lesson applies just as strongly to adults. In work and achievement, mindset determines how people handle pressure and setbacks. A fixed mindset can make success fragile. One mistake feels like everything is at risk. This often leads to avoidance, defensiveness, or giving up too soon. A growth mindset creates stability. Setbacks are expected and processed. Learning continues even when progress is slow. Over time, this leads to higher performance, not because of talent alone, but because of persistence and adaptability. Relationships are also deeply affected by mindset. With a fixed mindset, people may believe that compatibility is something that either exists or does not. Conflict then feels like proof that something is wrong. With a growth mindset, relationships are seen as skills that can be developed. Communication, understanding, and emotional awareness improve through effort. Conflict becomes a chance to understand each other better rather than a sign of failure. One of the most important ideas in the book is that mindset is not something you either have or do not have. Most people have a mix of both, depending on the situation. You might have a growth mindset at work, but a fixed mindset in relationships. The key is awareness. When you notice fixed mindset thoughts, such as fear of failure or the need to prove yourself, you can pause and reframe them. You can ask what can be learned instead of what might be lost. The book also makes it clear that adopting a growth mindset does not mean ignoring difficulty or pretending everything is easy. Growth involves struggle, frustration, and discomfort. The difference is that these experiences are no longer interpreted as signs of inadequacy. They are seen as part of the learning process. This shift changes how people talk to themselves internally, replacing harsh judgment with constructive curiosity. Another important message is that mindset affects leadership, teaching, and parenting. Leaders with a growth mindset develop others instead of controlling them. Teachers focus on learning instead of ranking. Parents create environments where curiosity and effort are valued more than perfection. These environments produce confidence that is grounded in resilience, not fear. Overall, this book teaches that success is not just about ability, but about how you relate to ability. When you change the story you tell yourself about growth, effort, and failure, your potential expands. The most powerful transformation happens when you stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "How can I grow from this?" Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This book explores how the human mind actually works when making decisions, judgments, and choices. It explains that we do not think in one single way, but through two different modes of thinking that operate together. Most of the time, we are unaware of which one is in control. Understanding this helps explain why we make good decisions sometimes, and surprisingly poor ones at other times, even when we believe we are being rational. The first mode of thinking is fast, automatic, and effortless. It works instantly, without conscious effort. This is the part of your mind that recognizes faces, understands simple sentences, reacts to danger, or answers easy questions like 2 + 2. It relies on intuition, patterns, and past experiences. This type of thinking is extremely useful. It allows us to navigate daily life efficiently without having to analyze every detail. However, because it operates quickly, it often relies on shortcuts and assumptions. The second mode of thinking is slow, deliberate, and effortful. This is the thinking you use when solving a complex math problem, analyzing an argument, or making an important decision. It requires focus and energy. It is more logical and careful, but also lazy in its own way. Because it takes effort, the brain prefers not to use it unless absolutely necessary. Most of the time, the slow system simply accepts what the fast system suggests without checking it carefully. A key idea in the book is that many of our errors in judgment come from trusting fast thinking too much. The fast system is excellent at making quick assessments, but it is also prone to biases. These biases are not signs of stupidity. They are natural features of how the brain evolved to save energy and act quickly in uncertain environments. The problem arises when these shortcuts are used in situations that require careful reasoning. One example discussed in the book is how we judge probability and risk. People often rely on how easily examples come to mind. If something feels familiar or vivid, we assume it is more likely to happen. This is why dramatic events can feel more common than they actually are. The fast system confuses ease of recall with truth. The slow system could correct this, but it often does not engage unless prompted. Another important concept is overconfidence. The book shows that humans tend to believe they understand the world better than they actually do. We create stories that explain events in a neat and logical way, even when reality is complex and uncertain. Once a story feels coherent, we trust it. This gives us a sense of control and predictability, but it also blinds us to uncertainty and chance. We mistake confidence for accuracy. The book also explains how loss affects us more strongly than gain. Losing something feels more painful than gaining the same thing feels pleasurable. This imbalance shapes many decisions, from financial choices to everyday behavior. It explains why people avoid risks even when the potential benefits are high, and why change often feels threatening. This tendency is not logical, but it is deeply human. Another theme is attention and effort. The slow system can only focus on a limited number of things at once. When it is overloaded, it becomes tired and less effective. This is why mental fatigue leads to poorer decisions. When tired, hungry, or distracted, we rely even more on fast thinking and are more likely to accept easy answers without scrutiny. Understanding this helps explain why timing and mental state matter so much in decision-making. The book does not suggest eliminating fast thinking. That would be impossible and undesirable. Instead, it teaches awareness. By recognizing when a decision is being driven by intuition, emotion, or mental shortcuts, you can pause and invite slower thinking when it matters. This pause creates space for better judgment. Even a small moment of reflection can reduce errors. Overall, the book offers a realistic view of human rationality. It shows that we are not purely logical beings, but storytelling minds shaped by evolution, emotion, and limited attention. True wisdom does not come from trying to be perfectly rational, but from understanding our mental habits and designing choices, environments, and systems that work with them rather than against them. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This book is about understanding people and learning how to interact with them in a way that builds trust, cooperation, and genuine connection. Rather than teaching manipulation or clever tricks, it focuses on timeless human principles. The central idea is simple. People want to feel valued, understood, and respected. When you learn to meet these needs sincerely, relationships improve naturally, both in personal life and in work. One of the first lessons is that criticism rarely changes people for the better. When people feel attacked or judged, their natural response is to defend themselves, justify their actions, or withdraw. Even when criticism is factually correct, it often damages relationships and closes the door to growth. The book encourages replacing blame with understanding. By trying to see situations from the other person's point of view, you reduce conflict and increase cooperation. Another key idea is the importance of appreciation. People are deeply motivated by recognition. Honest and specific appreciation makes others feel seen and valued. This does not mean flattery or exaggeration, which people can usually sense. It means noticing genuine efforts and qualities and acknowledging them openly. When people feel appreciated, they are more engaged, more willing to contribute, and more open to influence. The book also emphasizes the power of interest in others. Many people focus on being interesting, but effective communicators focus on being interested. Listening attentively, asking thoughtful questions, and remembering personal details create strong bonds. When someone feels truly listened to, they associate that positive feeling with the person who listened. This builds trust and warmth without force. A recurring theme is humility. The book advises avoiding arguments whenever possible. Winning an argument often means losing a relationship. Even if you prove someone wrong, you risk damaging their pride. Instead, it suggests finding common ground, showing respect for differing opinions, and allowing others to save face. This approach keeps communication open and productive. Another principle is to admit mistakes quickly and honestly. Taking responsibility disarms tension, it shows confidence and integrity, and it encourages others to respond with understanding rather than hostility. People are more forgiving when they see accountability instead of excuses. This habit strengthens credibility and respect over time. When it comes to influence, the book explains that people are more likely to act when they feel the idea is theirs. Rather than giving direct orders or pushing opinions, effective influencers ask questions and guide others to their own conclusions. This preserves autonomy and dignity. People support what they help create. The book also highlights the emotional side of human behavior. Logic alone rarely changes minds. Emotions drive decisions, and logic is often used afterward to justify them. By appealing to feelings such as pride, belonging, and purpose, communication becomes more effective. This does not mean being dishonest. It means recognizing that humans are emotional beings first and rational beings second. Leadership, according to the book, is about encouragement rather than control. People grow when their strengths are recognized and their confidence is supported. Instead of pointing out faults harshly, effective leaders give feedback gently, focus on improvement, and express belief in the other person's potential. This creates loyalty and motivation rather than fear. A subtle but powerful idea in the book is the importance of names. Remembering and using someone's name shows respect and attention. It signals that the person matters as an individual, not just as a role or function. Small gestures like this accumulate into strong impressions over time. Overall, the book teaches that influence is not about dominance or clever persuasion. It is about empathy, respect, and genuine human connection. When you shift your focus from getting what you want to helping others feel understood and valued, cooperation becomes natural. Relationships deepen, resistance fades, and communication becomes smoother. The lasting message is that success with people begins with character. By cultivating kindness, patience, and sincere interest in others, you create an environment where trust and influence grow naturally. These principles work because they align with fundamental human needs that do not change with time. The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business, by Charles Duhigg. This book explains that much of what we do every day is driven not by conscious choice, but by habits operating quietly in the background. These habits shape our health, productivity, relationships, and even entire organizations. The key message is not that habits control us completely, but that once we understand how they work, we can change them deliberately. At the center of the book is a simple framework called the habit loop. Every habit follows the same structure: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is a trigger that tells the brain to go into automatic mode. The routine is the behavior itself, whether physical, mental, or emotional. The reward is what the brain gets from the habit, reinforcing it and making it more likely to repeat. Over time, this loop becomes deeply ingrained, allowing the brain to save effort by running behaviors on autopilot. The brain loves habits because they conserve energy. When a behavior becomes habitual, the brain no longer needs to think hard about it. This is helpful for daily tasks, but it also explains why bad habits can feel so difficult to break. The brain has learned that a certain cue leads to a reliable reward, so it resists change. Understanding this removes shame. Struggle does not mean weakness. It means the brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. One of the most important ideas in the book is that habits never truly disappear. They can be changed, but they are not erased. To change a habit, you keep the same cue and reward, but insert a new routine. This is known as the golden rule of habit change. For example, if stress triggers a habit and relief is the reward, the key is not eliminating stress, but finding a healthier routine that provides the same sense of relief. This approach makes change realistic and sustainable. The book also introduces the concept of craving. Habits become powerful when the brain begins to anticipate the reward. This anticipation creates a craving that drives the behavior. Once a craving is established, the habit becomes automatic. Recognizing what you are really craving, such as comfort, connection, or control, helps you choose better routines that still satisfy that underlying need. Another major theme is the idea of keystone habits. These are habits that, once changed, create a ripple effect across many areas of life. Keystone habits influence how people see themselves and how they structure their days. For example, regular exercise often leads to better eating, improved focus, and increased confidence, even though those changes were not the original goal. Keystone habits create momentum and identity shifts. The book also explores habits in organizations and businesses. Companies rely on routines just as individuals do. These routines can be powerful forces for efficiency or sources of hidden problems. By identifying and reshaping organizational habits, leaders can transform culture without micromanaging every action. Small changes in routine can produce dramatic results when applied consistently. Social habits are another important area the book examines. Humans are deeply influenced by group behavior. When people believe change is possible and see others doing it, habits spread more easily. This is why movements, trends, and cultural shifts can happen rapidly. Belief, especially shared belief, plays a critical role in sustaining change during difficult moments. One powerful insight from the book is that awareness creates choice. Many habits operate below consciousness, but once you identify the cue and reward, you regain influence. You may not control the first impulse, but you can control the response. This gap between impulse and action is where personal growth happens. The book also addresses responsibility. Understanding habits does not remove accountability. Instead, it reframes it. You are not responsible for the habits you inherited or unconsciously formed, but you are responsible for changing them once you become aware. This balance of compassion and responsibility makes change feel empowering rather than overwhelming. Overall, the book shows that small changes applied consistently can reshape lives and systems. Habits are not destiny, they are patterns, and patterns, once understood, can be redesigned. By learning how habits work, you gain a practical tool for lasting change in both personal life and professional environments. You Are a Badass: How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. This book is about breaking free from self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs, and learning to live with confidence, intention, and joy. Its tone is bold, humorous, and direct, but the message underneath is deeply practical. The core idea is that most people are not held back by lack of talent or opportunity, but by the stories they tell themselves about who they are and what they deserve. Once those stories change, behavior and results begin to change as well. A central theme of the book is that your thoughts shape your reality. The way you talk to yourself internally influences your emotions, decisions, and actions. Many people run on mental autopilot, repeating beliefs they absorbed from childhood, culture, or past failures. These beliefs often say things like, "I'm not good enough," "I'm not lucky," or "people like me don't succeed." The book encourages readers to become aware of these thoughts and challenge them rather than accepting them as facts. Another important idea is personal responsibility. The book emphasizes that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you are responsible for how you respond and for the direction of your life. Blaming circumstances, other people, or the past keeps you stuck. Taking responsibility does not mean self-blame. It means recognizing that you have the power to choose differently, starting now. This shift alone can feel uncomfortable, but it is also deeply empowering. The book also addresses fear in a very honest way. Fear is presented not as something to eliminate, but as something to understand and move through. Fear often shows up when you are about to grow, try something new, or step outside your comfort zone. Instead of seeing fear as a warning to stop, the book reframes it as a sign that you are moving in the right direction. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act anyway. Money and success are also discussed openly. The book challenges the idea that wanting more is selfish or shallow. Wanting growth, abundance, or a better life is framed as natural and healthy. Many people subconsciously push success away because of guilt, shame, or fear of judgment. By examining beliefs around money and worthiness, readers are encouraged to allow themselves to want more without apology. Another recurring message is the importance of habits and consistency. Big change does not come from one dramatic decision, but from daily choices aligned with your goals. Small actions, repeated over time, reinforce a new identity. When you start acting like someone who believes in themselves, confidence grows naturally. Action builds belief, not the other way around. The book also emphasizes intuition and inner guidance. It suggests that beneath fear and noise, there is a quieter voice that knows what feels right. Learning to listen to that voice requires slowing down, trusting yourself, and letting go of the need for external validation. This does not mean ignoring logic, but balancing it with self-trust. Another powerful point is the role of energy and environment. The people you spend time with, the media you consume, and the way you talk about yourself all influence your mindset. Surrounding yourself with supportive influences and limiting exposure to negativity makes personal growth easier. Change becomes less of a struggle when your environment supports who you are becoming. Humor plays an important role throughout the book. By not taking self-doubt too seriously, it becomes easier to loosen its grip. Laughter creates distance from negative thoughts and reminds you that you are not broken. You are simply human, learning and evolving. Ultimately, the book's message is that you are already worthy. You do not need to earn confidence or wait for permission to live boldly. Growth is not about fixing yourself, but about remembering who you are beneath fear and conditioning. When you choose thoughts that support you, take responsibility for your direction, and act despite fear, life begins to expand. The book encourages readers to stop shrinking, stop apologizing for wanting more, and start showing up fully. Not because life will suddenly be perfect, but because it will finally feel like it belongs to you. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. This book is about learning to live wholeheartedly by letting go of the pressure to be perfect and embracing who you really are. It speaks to the quiet exhaustion many people feel from trying to meet expectations, please others, and hide parts of themselves they believe are not acceptable. The central message is that a meaningful and fulfilling life does not come from perfection, but from authenticity, courage, and self-compassion. At the heart of the book is the idea that worthiness is not something you earn. Many people grow up believing they must be better, more successful, or more put together to deserve love and belonging. This belief creates constant anxiety and shame. The book challenges this by stating clearly that you are worthy simply because you exist. When you stop trying to prove your value, you free up energy to actually live. A major theme is shame, which is described as the fear of being seen as flawed and therefore unworthy of connection. Shame thrives in secrecy and silence. It convinces people to hide their struggles and present a polished version of themselves to the world. The book explains that the opposite of shame is not perfection, but empathy. When people share their experiences honestly and are met with understanding, shame loses its power. The book introduces the idea of wholehearted living. This means engaging in life from a place of worthiness, even when things are messy or uncertain. Wholehearted people allow themselves to be vulnerable. They take emotional risks, speak honestly, and show up even when there are no guarantees. Vulnerability is not presented as weakness, but as the courage to be seen as you truly are. Another important idea is the difference between fitting in and belonging. Fitting in requires changing who you are to match expectations. Belonging requires being yourself and being accepted for it. Many people sacrifice authenticity in order to fit in, but this leads to loneliness and disconnection. The book encourages choosing belonging over approval, even when it feels uncomfortable. The book also addresses the habit of numbing emotions. When people try to avoid pain, they often numb joy as well. This can happen through overworking, constant distraction, or unhealthy coping behaviors. The message is that emotions cannot be selectively turned off. To fully experience joy, gratitude, and love, you must also allow sadness, fear, and disappointment. Emotional openness creates a fuller, richer life. Self-compassion plays a central role throughout the book. Instead of harsh self-criticism, the author encourages treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a close friend. Self-compassion does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means acknowledging mistakes without attacking your worth. This creates resilience rather than shame-driven motivation. The book also challenges the culture of comparison. Comparing yourself to others often leads to feelings of inadequacy, even when appearances are misleading. The book reminds readers that comparison steals joy and disconnects people from their own values. When you focus on what truly matters to you, rather than what others are doing, life becomes more grounded and intentional. Another key theme is cultivating gratitude and joy. Joy is not portrayed as a constant state, but as something that requires practice and presence. Gratitude helps anchor joy by focusing attention on what is already meaningful, rather than what is missing. Wholehearted living involves recognizing moments of goodness, even in imperfect circumstances. The book also encourages setting boundaries. Saying no, resting, and honoring your limits are acts of self-respect. Many people feel guilty for prioritizing their needs, but the book reframes boundaries as essential for healthy relationships. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to do the same. Overall, the book offers a gentle but powerful shift in perspective. It invites you to stop performing and start living. It reminds you that imperfection is not a flaw to be fixed, but a shared human experience. When you embrace your imperfections with courage and compassion, you create space for deeper connection, creativity, and joy. The message is not about becoming fearless or flawless. It is about showing up as you are, trusting that you are enough, and choosing authenticity over approval. In doing so, life becomes more honest, meaningful, and alive. Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. This book is about realizing that you have far more control over your life than you may believe, and learning how to use that control consciously. Its central message is that lasting change does not come from wishing, hoping, or waiting for motivation, but from understanding how your mind works and deciding, with clarity and intensity, who you want to become. The giant, in the title, refers to your inner power, your ability to choose, decide, and direct your life deliberately. One of the main ideas in the book is that your decisions shape your destiny. Many people think their lives are determined by circumstances, luck, or personality. The book challenges this by showing that the moments that truly change a life are moments of decision. When you decide what you will no longer accept and what you will commit to instead, your behavior begins to change. Decisions give direction and energy. Without them, life feels reactive and scattered. The book explains that emotions are not random. They are responses created by how you interpret events. Two people can experience the same situation and feel completely different emotions. This happens because meaning, not events themselves, creates emotional experience. When you change the meaning you assign to something, you change how you feel. This understanding gives you emotional control. Instead of being a victim of moods, you learn to shift your emotional state intentionally. Another important concept is that of patterns. People often repeat the same behaviors, relationships, and outcomes over and over, even when they want something different. These patterns are driven by habits of thought, emotional responses, and physical actions. The book teaches that to change your life, you must change these patterns consistently. Small shifts, practiced daily, lead to large transformations over time. Beliefs play a central role in the book. Beliefs act like filters that shape what you notice, what you expect, and what you attempt. Limiting beliefs create invisible walls. Empowering beliefs expand possibilities. The book encourages examining beliefs and asking whether they truly serve you. By replacing limiting beliefs with empowering ones, your behavior naturally changes. You begin to act in alignment with a stronger self-image. Another major theme is the importance of standards. Standards are the rules you set for what is acceptable in your life. Many people have goals, but low standards. They say they want change, but tolerate behavior that keeps them stuck. Raising your standards means deciding what you will no longer accept from yourself and others. This shift creates immediate change because it affects daily choices. The book also emphasizes the role of language. The words you use internally and externally shape how you experience reality. When you consistently use disempowering language, your emotions and actions follow. By consciously changing language, such as replacing absolute statements with more flexible ones, you can reduce emotional intensity and increase clarity. Language becomes a tool for emotional mastery. Physiology is another key element. The book explains that the way you use your body affects how you feel. Posture, breathing, movement, and facial expression all influence emotional state. By changing your physical state, you can change how you feel quickly. This reinforces the idea that you are not trapped in emotions. You can shift them through conscious action. The book also highlights the importance of values. Values are what truly drive decisions and behavior. When your actions align with your values, life feels meaningful and fulfilling. When they do not, frustration and confusion arise. Clarifying values helps you make better choices and feel more grounded. It also allows you to design a life that feels authentic rather than reactive. Another strong message is the power of consistent action. Motivation comes and goes, but habits create results. The book encourages daily rituals that reinforce physical energy, emotional strength, and mental clarity. Consistency, not intensity, is what leads to long-term success. Overall, the book teaches that personal power comes from awareness, decision, and action. You are not defined by your past, but by the choices you make today. When you learn to direct your thoughts, emotions, language, and body deliberately, you awaken the part of yourself that can create meaningful change. The message is not about perfection, but about responsibility and possibility. By taking ownership of your inner world, you gain influence over your outer world. Life becomes something you shape, not something that simply happens to you. The Magic of Thinking Big by David J. Schwartz. This book is built around a simple but powerful idea. The size of your success is strongly connected to the size of your thinking. Many people limit their lives not because of lack of ability, but because they think small, aim low, and underestimate what is possible for them. The book encourages readers to expand their mindset, raise expectations, and act with confidence even before they feel fully ready. A central message is that belief shapes performance. When you believe you can succeed, your behavior changes automatically. You take more initiative, persist longer, and look for solutions instead of excuses. When you believe you cannot succeed, you hesitate, avoid risk, and give up easily. The book emphasizes that belief is a choice, not a fixed trait. You can train yourself to believe bigger by consciously changing how you think and speak. The book explains that intelligence, talent, and background matter far less than attitude. Many highly capable people remain stuck because they doubt themselves or fear failure. Meanwhile, people with average ability often achieve remarkable success because they act confidently and think positively. Confidence is not presented as arrogance, but as trust in your ability to learn, adapt, and grow. Thinking big means believing you can improve, not that you are perfect. Fear is another major topic. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, and fear of embarrassment stop people from taking action. The book teaches that fear shrinks when you act. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. Waiting to feel ready keeps you stuck. Acting despite fear builds momentum and reduces anxiety over time. Courage grows through practice. The book also highlights the importance of attitude toward others. Thinking big includes how you view people. When you respect others, listen well, and show genuine interest, relationships improve. The book encourages seeing people not as obstacles or competitors, but as allies. A positive attitude toward others creates opportunities and cooperation that small thinking cannot access. Another key idea is the danger of excuses. Excuses feel comforting in the short term, but limit growth in the long term. The book identifies common excuses such as lack of time, age, luck, or education. It encourages replacing excuses with questions like, how can I make this work? This shift from justification to problem solving opens new possibilities. The book also addresses the power of language. The words you use shape how you think and feel. Using weak, negative, or limiting language reinforces small thinking. Replacing it with positive, action-oriented language strengthens belief and motivation. This applies both to internal self-talk and external communication. Speaking confidently helps you think confidently. Visualization plays an important role as well. The book encourages mentally rehearsing success. When you visualize yourself succeeding, your mind becomes familiar with that outcome. This reduces fear and increases readiness. Visualization is not about fantasy, but about preparing your mind for effective action. Another theme is goal setting. Thinking big means setting goals that stretch you rather than settling for what feels safe. Big goals energize behavior. They provide direction and purpose. The book emphasizes breaking large goals into manageable steps so progress feels achievable. Small actions, when guided by big goals, create meaningful growth. The book also discusses leadership. Leaders are not defined by position, but by mindset. Thinking big allows people to inspire others, take responsibility, and act decisively. Leadership starts with self-leadership, choosing optimism over cynicism and initiative over passivity. One practical lesson in the book is to surround yourself with positivity. Your environment influences your thinking. Spending time with negative or cynical people reinforces small thinking. Choosing uplifting influences strengthens belief and ambition. This includes what you read, watch, and listen to daily. Overall, the book teaches that thinking big is a habit that can be learned. It does not require special talent, wealth, or privilege. It requires choosing confidence over doubt, action over hesitation, and possibility over limitation. When you raise your expectations of yourself and your future, your behavior rises to meet them. The message is not about unrealistic dreaming, but about refusing to live beneath your potential. By expanding how you think, you expand what you attempt, and what you consistently attempt is what ultimately shapes your life. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. This book examines how power works in human relationships, institutions, and societies. Rather than presenting power as something moral or immoral, it treats it as a force that exists wherever people interact. The core idea is that power follows patterns. When you understand these patterns, you become less vulnerable to manipulation and more capable of navigating complex social dynamics with awareness. The book is structured around historical observations of how people gain, maintain, and lose power. It does not encourage blind ambition, but realism. One of its main messages is that ignoring power does not protect you from it. People who believe power games do not exist are often the ones most affected by them. Awareness is presented as protection. A recurring theme is perception. Power is strongly linked to how others see you. Reputation, image, and appearance often matter as much as, or more than, actual skill. The book explains that people react not to who you truly are, but to the signals you send. Managing perception is therefore essential. This does not mean lying constantly, but understanding that visibility, mystery, and consistency shape how others respond to you. Another important idea is emotional control. The book shows that reacting emotionally, especially in anger or insecurity, weakens your position. Emotional reactions give others information and leverage. Those who maintain composure gain advantage because they can observe while others reveal themselves. Self-control is framed as a form of strength, not repression. The book also explores hierarchy. Power structures exist in workplaces, families, friendships, and social groups. Pretending hierarchy does not exist can lead to mistakes. Understanding who holds influence, who seeks it, and who feels threatened helps you move more wisely. The book warns against outshining those above you too openly, as insecurity can trigger backlash. Respecting egos is often a strategic necessity. Another theme is timing. Acting too soon or too late can weaken even good ideas. Power often depends on patience and observation. Knowing when to advance, when to wait, and when to retreat is a skill. The book emphasizes that force is not always the most effective approach. Subtlety and timing often achieve more with less resistance. The book also discusses the role of dependence. Power increases when others need you. This does not mean exploiting people, but cultivating value. When your skills, knowledge, or presence are useful, your influence grows naturally. At the same time, becoming overly dependent on others reduces your freedom. Maintaining a degree of independence is essential. Another strong idea is adaptability. Fixed identities and rigid behavior limit power. The book shows that those who survive and thrive are often those who can adapt their style to different situations. This does not require abandoning values, but understanding context. Flexibility allows you to respond rather than react. The book repeatedly warns against naivety. Assuming others will always act fairly or transparently can be dangerous. This does not mean becoming paranoid or cynical, but realistic. People act from self-interest more often than from pure intention. Recognizing this helps you protect yourself without losing empathy. At the same time, the book does not promote constant aggression. Many of its lessons focus on restraint, invisibility, and choosing battles carefully. Power is often lost through unnecessary conflict. Knowing when not to engage is as important as knowing how to act. One of the deeper lessons of the book is self-knowledge. Many people lose power because they do not understand their own weaknesses, desires, or emotional triggers. When others know you better than you know yourself, they can influence you easily. Awareness of your own patterns is a form of defense. The book can feel uncomfortable because it strips away comforting illusions about fairness and intention. However, its purpose is not to turn readers into manipulators, but into observers. When you understand the rules others may already be playing by, you gain choice. You can decide how close or far you want to engage. Ultimately, the book teaches that power is about understanding human nature. When you see how fear, desire, pride, and insecurity drive behavior, you stop taking actions personally and start responding strategically. Power becomes less mysterious and less threatening. The central takeaway is awareness. Power dynamics exist whether you acknowledge them or not. By understanding them, you reduce vulnerability, increase clarity, and gain the ability to move through the world with greater intention and calm. The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. This book is about freedom, fearlessness, and personal power in the real world. It blends strategic thinking with lived experience, showing how inner strength and mental clarity create success regardless of background or circumstances. The core message is that fear is the main force that limits human potential. When fear is reduced or removed, clarity, creativity, and decisive action naturally increase. The book introduces the idea of the 50th law, which represents a state of mind beyond fear. It does not mean recklessness or aggression. It means seeing reality clearly, without emotional distortion. When fear no longer controls decisions, people stop reacting defensively and start acting strategically. Life becomes less about survival and more about deliberate creation. A major theme is realism. The book emphasizes the importance of seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Many people avoid uncomfortable truths because they are afraid of what they might discover. This avoidance leads to poor decisions and dependence on illusion. By facing reality directly, even when it is harsh, you gain power. Truth removes confusion and allows effective action. Fear often creates emotional reactions such as anger, insecurity, or impulsiveness. The book explains that these reactions weaken your position because they make behavior predictable. Fearless people are harder to manipulate because they are calm, observant, and grounded. They respond instead of reacting. This emotional self-control becomes a major advantage in business, relationships, and conflict. Another key idea is self-reliance. The book encourages building independence both mentally and practically. When you depend too heavily on others for approval, resources, or direction, you give away power. Self-reliance does not mean isolation. It means having the ability to stand on your own, make decisions, and adapt when circumstances change. This creates confidence that does not collapse under pressure. The book also explores the concept of opportunism. Fearless individuals stay alert and flexible. Instead of rigidly following plans, they adjust to reality and take advantage of unexpected opportunities. This requires letting go of ego and attachment to a single identity. When you are not afraid of change, you can reinvent yourself when needed. Another important theme is the relationship between discipline and freedom. True freedom does not come from avoiding structure, but from mastering it. Discipline creates options. When you develop skills, routines, and control over your habits, you are less at the mercy of chaos. The book presents discipline as a tool for independence, not restriction. The book also discusses power dynamics in society. People often act from fear of losing status, money, or approval. This fear makes them predictable and controllable. Those who understand this can navigate systems more effectively. However, the book emphasizes awareness over manipulation. Understanding power dynamics helps you protect yourself and choose your path consciously. A strong emphasis is placed on action. Fear often keeps people stuck in planning, dreaming, or complaining. The book encourages direct engagement with challenges. Action cuts through fear because it produces feedback. Once you act, uncertainty decreases. Even failure becomes useful information instead of a source of shame. The book also highlights the importance of purpose. Fearless action is not random. It is guided by a clear sense of direction. When you know what you want and why you want it, fear loses its grip. Purpose gives meaning to effort and struggle. Without purpose, fear fills the vacuum. Another recurring message is toughness combined with clarity. The book rejects victimhood while also rejecting blind aggression. Strength comes from understanding yourself, your environment, and your goals. This balanced toughness allows you to endure hardship without becoming bitter or reactive. The book's tone is grounded and direct. It does not promise comfort or ease. Instead, it promises empowerment through awareness and courage. It teaches that fear is not something to analyze endlessly, but something to move beyond through understanding and decisive action. Ultimately, the book teaches that the greatest freedom is psychological. When you are no longer driven by fear of failure, rejection, or loss, you gain the ability to think clearly and act boldly. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. The message is not that fear will disappear completely, but that it no longer sits in the driver's seat. When fear loses control, personal power emerges naturally. That is the essence of the 50th law. The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. This book explains that trauma is not just something that happens in the mind as a memory or a thought. Trauma lives in the body, the nervous system, and the brain. Even when a person consciously wants to move on, the body may still react as if the danger is present. The core message is that healing trauma requires understanding how experiences are stored physically and emotionally, not only talking about what happened. The book shows that traumatic experiences change how the brain processes safety, threat, and connection. When someone experiences overwhelming stress, especially when escape is impossible, the brain's alarm system becomes overactive. Parts of the brain responsible for survival take control, while areas responsible for reasoning, language, and self-awareness may shut down. This is why trauma survivors often struggle to explain what they feel, even when they understand logically that the danger is over. One of the key ideas is that trauma fragments experience. Instead of being stored as a coherent story in memory, traumatic events are stored as sensations, emotions, images, and physical reactions. A sound, a smell, a posture, or a tone of voice can trigger intense reactions without conscious understanding of why. The body reacts first, before the mind can catch up. This explains panic attacks, emotional shutdown, dissociation, and chronic tension. The book emphasizes that trauma is not limited to extreme events like war or disasters. It can also result from neglect, emotional abuse, inconsistent caregiving, or growing up in environments where safety and connection were unpredictable. Especially in childhood, the nervous system learns patterns that shape how a person experiences relationships, trust, and self-worth later in life. Another major theme is the role of the nervous system. Trauma dysregulates the system that balances arousal and calm. Some people become hyper-aroused, always on edge, alert, and reactive. Others become hypoaroused, numb, disconnected, and shut down. Many people fluctuate between the two. These responses are not weaknesses. They are survival adaptations that once helped, but later become limiting. The book challenges the idea that simply talking about trauma is enough to heal it. While understanding and naming experiences can be helpful, trauma often exists beyond words. The body needs to relearn safety. Healing involves restoring a sense of control, presence, and connection within the body. Without this, insight alone may not bring relief. A central message is the importance of feeling safe. Trauma takes away the feeling of being safe in one's own body and in the world. Healing begins when the nervous system experiences safety again, gradually and repeatedly. This sense of safety allows the brain to integrate traumatic memories instead of reliving them as present threats. The book explores several approaches that help restore this connection between mind and body. These include practices that increase bodily awareness, emotional regulation, and a sense of agency. Movement, breath, rhythm, and attention are shown to be powerful tools for calming the nervous system. When the body learns that it can move, choose, and rest, trauma begins to loosen its grip. Another key theme is connection. Trauma often occurs in the context of relationships and disrupts the ability to trust. Healing, therefore, often requires safe, attuned relationships where a person feels seen and respected. Being understood without judgment helps rewire the nervous system. Connection becomes a corrective experience that restores the ability to feel present with others. The book also discusses dissociation, a common trauma response. Dissociation allows a person to mentally escape when physical escape is not possible. While protective in the moment, it can later lead to feeling detached from emotions, the body, or reality. Healing involves gently reconnecting with sensation and emotion without becoming overwhelmed. A powerful idea in the book is that trauma is not a personal failure. It is a biological response to overwhelming experience. When people understand that their symptoms are adaptations, shame decreases. Compassion replaces self-blame. This shift alone can be deeply healing. The book also emphasizes choice and agency. Trauma takes away the sense of control. Healing restores it. Even small choices, such as how to breathe, how to move, or when to pause, help rebuild trust in oneself. Over time, this creates resilience and a renewed sense of ownership over one's life. Overall, the book presents trauma healing as a process of integration. Mind, brain, and body must work together again. Healing is not about erasing the past, but about allowing the present to feel safe. When the body no longer reacts as if the trauma is still happening, life opens up again. The Art of Possibility by Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander. This book is about shifting how you see yourself, other people, and the world in order to unlock creativity, connection, and possibility. It is not about forcing change through effort or control, but about changing perspective. The core idea is that many of the limits we experience are not fixed realities, but interpretations. When interpretation changes, experience changes. At the heart of the book is the idea that life is not a competition. Many people unconsciously live in a world of scarcity, where success means someone else must lose. This mindset creates pressure, comparison, fear of failure, and constant self-judgment. The book invites readers into a world of abundance, where possibilities expand when competition is replaced by contribution. In this view, your success does not take away from others. It adds something new to the whole. One of the most powerful concepts introduced is that of giving yourself an A. This does not mean ignoring mistakes or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing to see yourself as already worthy and capable of learning. When you give yourself an A, fear of failure decreases, curiosity increases, and growth becomes easier. You stop performing for approval and start engaging fully with life. Another key idea is responsibility without blame. The book encourages taking responsibility for your experience, not by criticizing yourself or others, but by recognizing your role in how situations unfold. Blame locks people into defensiveness. Responsibility opens space for change. When you ask, "How am I contributing to this situation?" you regain choice and influence. The book also explores the power of reframing. Every situation can be viewed through multiple lenses. A challenge can be seen as a threat or as an invitation. A mistake can be evidence of inadequacy or evidence of learning. By consciously choosing interpretations that expand possibility, you shift emotional energy and behavior. This does not deny difficulty. It changes how you relate to it. Another important theme is presence. Many people are trapped in anxiety about the future or regret about the past. The book emphasizes the importance of being fully present in the moment. When attention is grounded in the present, creativity and connection increase. Presence allows you to respond authentically instead of reacting habitually. The book places strong emphasis on contribution. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" it suggests asking, "What can I contribute?" This subtle shift reduces pressure and increases meaning. When you focus on contribution, you naturally bring your strengths forward. You stop measuring yourself against others and start expressing what is uniquely yours. Relationships are a central focus. The book encourages seeing others not as obstacles or competitors, but as partners in possibility. When you assume positive intent and listen generously, communication deepens. Giving others an A means seeing their potential rather than their limitations. This does not mean ignoring harmful behavior, but choosing curiosity over judgment whenever possible. Another powerful idea is that rules are often inventions, not truths. Many limits people live by were created unconsciously, inherited from culture, family, or past experiences. The book encourages questioning these assumptions. When you ask whether a rule is truly necessary, new options emerge. Freedom often begins with questioning what you assumed was fixed. The book also explores leadership not as authority or control, but as the ability to create space for others to grow. Leaders who operate from possibility invite participation, creativity, and trust. They do not dominate the spotlight. They help others shine. This kind of leadership builds resilience and shared ownership. Music is used throughout the book as a metaphor for life. In music, mistakes are not disasters, they are part of the performance. Musicians listen deeply, adjust in real time, and stay engaged with the whole. This mindset can be applied to life. When you stop striving for perfection and start participating fully, life becomes more fluid and alive. Another key theme is letting go of the need to be right. Being right often comes at the cost of connection. When you loosen your grip on certainty, you open space for dialogue and discovery. Curiosity replaces defensiveness. Growth becomes a shared experience rather than a battle of viewpoints. Overall, the book teaches that possibility is not something you wait for. It is something you create through perspective. When you shift from scarcity to abundance, from judgment to curiosity, and from fear to contribution, life expands. Problems do not necessarily disappear, but your relationship to them transforms. The message is gentle yet powerful. You do not need to fix yourself to live more fully. You need to see differently. Can't Hurt Me: Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds by David Goggins. This book is about confronting pain, discomfort, and limitation head-on and using them as tools for growth rather than excuses to stop. It tells a raw and uncompromising message. Your mind will try to quit long before your body truly has to. Learning to master that inner resistance is the key to unlocking strength, discipline, and self-respect. At the core of the book is the idea that most people live far below their true potential. Comfort, convenience, and fear slowly shrink what people believe they are capable of. The book challenges this by arguing that suffering, when chosen intentionally and used correctly, can become a powerful teacher. Hard experiences are not meant to break you. They are meant to reveal what you are capable of when you stop negotiating with your excuses. A central theme is accountability. The book emphasizes taking full responsibility for your life without blaming circumstances, trauma, or other people. This does not deny hardship, it acknowledges it honestly, but instead of asking for sympathy, the focus is on ownership. When you accept that no one is coming to save you, something shifts. You stop waiting and start acting. The book introduces the idea that the mind is often the weakest link. When faced with discomfort, fear, or fatigue, the brain seeks safety and relief. It sends signals telling you to stop, slow down, or give up. The book argues that these signals are usually exaggerated. By learning to push past them safely, you discover that you have far more capacity than you thought. This process builds confidence rooted in experience, not positive thinking. Another key idea is the concept of mental callousing. Just as physical calluses form through repeated stress, mental toughness is built through repeated exposure to discomfort. Each time you do something hard, especially when you do not feel like it, you strengthen your ability to endure. Over time, discomfort becomes familiar rather than threatening. The book also highlights the importance of honesty with oneself. Many people soften their self-image to protect their ego. The book rejects this approach. It encourages brutally honest self-assessment. Where are you weak? Where are you undisciplined? Where do you make excuses? This honesty is not meant to shame, but to clarify. You cannot improve what you refuse to face. Another powerful idea is the use of suffering as fuel. Instead of trying to forget past pain, the book suggests using it as motivation. Pain becomes proof of survival and a source of strength. This approach reframes hardship as evidence of resilience rather than damage. It turns past struggle into momentum. The book strongly emphasizes discipline over motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Discipline, built through routine and commitment, carries you forward regardless of mood. The book encourages building daily habits that reinforce strength, structure, and self-respect. These habits create identity. You become someone who does hard things because you do them consistently. A recurring message is that growth happens in solitude and silence. External validation is fleeting. True confidence comes from knowing what you have endured when no one was watching. This kind of confidence is quiet and stable. It does not depend on praise or approval. The book also introduces the idea of expanding your mental limits. Many people unconsciously set ceilings on effort. Once they believe they are at their limit, they stop. The book encourages deliberately pushing beyond these perceived limits in controlled ways. Each breakthrough expands your understanding of what is possible. Another theme is resilience through purpose. Endurance without meaning becomes empty punishment. The book emphasizes choosing a reason for suffering. When pain is connected to a purpose, it becomes bearable and even empowering. Purpose gives direction to effort and prevents burnout. The tone of the book is intense and confrontational, but the underlying message is one of self-respect. Pushing yourself is not about proving worth to others. It is about proving to yourself that you are capable of more than you believed. Confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself, especially when it is uncomfortable. Ultimately, the book teaches that the mind can either be a prison or a weapon. When ruled by fear and comfort, it limits life. When trained through discipline and exposure to difficulty, it becomes a powerful ally. You learn that pain is temporary, excuses are optional, and strength is built through action. The book does not promise ease or balance. It promises growth through effort. It asks you to stop asking what feels good and start asking what builds strength. When you do, you begin to realize that adversity does not define you. How you respond to it does. What happened to you? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. This book is about changing the way we understand human behavior, pain, and healing. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" it invites a more compassionate and accurate question. What happened to you? This shift changes everything. It moves the focus from blame and judgment to understanding, context, and empathy. The core message is that behavior is shaped by experience, especially early experience, and healing begins when people feel seen rather than labeled. At the center of the book is the idea that the brain develops in response to experiences. Especially in childhood, the brain is shaped by relationships, stress, safety, and care. When children grow up in environments of chronic stress, neglect, or trauma, their nervous systems adapt in order to survive. These adaptations may later appear as anxiety, aggression, withdrawal, or difficulty trusting others. The book emphasizes that these behaviors are not character flaws. They are survival responses. A key concept explained is that trauma is not just about what happened, but about how the nervous system responded to it. Two people can experience the same event and be affected very differently, depending on timing, support, and previous experiences. Trauma is defined less by the event itself and more by how overwhelming and isolating it felt. When stress is intense and prolonged, especially without supportive relationships, it reshapes how the brain and body function. The book highlights the importance of early relationships. Safe, attuned caregiving helps regulate a child's nervous system. When caregivers are predictable and responsive, children learn that the world is safe and that their needs matter. When care is inconsistent, frightening, or absent, the nervous system learns to stay on guard. These early patterns often carry into adulthood, influencing how people handle stress, relationships, and emotions. Another major theme is regulation. Before people can reason, reflect, or change behavior, they need to feel safe. The book explains that when someone is dysregulated, meaning their nervous system is overwhelmed or shut down, logic and advice do not work. Healing must start with regulation. This includes calm presence, predictable rhythms, and supportive connection. Only when the body feels safe can the mind engage. The book also addresses resilience. Resilience is not a trait some people have and others do not. It is built through experiences of connection and support. Even one stable, caring relationship can buffer the effects of trauma. Healing does not require perfect circumstances. It requires consistent moments of safety and understanding over time. A powerful idea in the book is that punishment often fails to address trauma-driven behavior. When behavior is rooted in fear or dysregulation, punishment can increase stress and reinforce the very patterns it is meant to stop. The book encourages approaches based on curiosity rather than control. Asking what a behavior communicates opens the door to effective support and change. The conversations in the book also explore how trauma affects adults. Many adults carry unprocessed childhood experiences that influence their reactions without their awareness. Triggers can cause emotional responses that feel out of proportion to the present moment. Understanding this helps reduce shame. People are not broken. Their nervous systems are responding based on old patterns. Another important theme is healing through relationships. Because trauma often happens in relationships, healing also happens in relationships. Being met with empathy, patience, and consistency helps rewire the brain. Feeling understood allows people to reconnect with themselves and others. Healing is not a solitary process, it is relational. The book emphasizes that healing is possible at any age. The brain remains capable of change throughout life. With the right experiences, patterns can soften and shift. This gives hope to those who believe it is too late to change. Growth may be slower in adulthood, but it is still real and meaningful. Language is also highlighted as a powerful tool. The words we use to describe behavior shape how we respond to it. Labels can limit understanding. Curiosity expands it. When we change our questions, we change our outcomes. Ultimately, the book teaches that compassion is not weakness. It is a practical and effective approach to healing. Understanding the roots of behavior does not excuse harm, but it allows for responses that actually lead to growth and safety. The central message is deeply human. People do not act the way they do because they are bad or broken. They act based on what they have experienced. When we learn to ask what happened rather than what is wrong, we create space for healing, resilience, and connection to grow. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself: How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One by Joe Dispenza. This book is about understanding how your thoughts, emotions, habits, and beliefs create the version of yourself you live as every day, and how to consciously change that version. The central idea is that personality creates personal reality. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and reacting in the same ways, you will keep producing the same life. To create change, you must break the habit of being who you have been. A key message of the book is that the mind and body are deeply connected. Thoughts create emotions, and emotions reinforce thoughts. Over time, this loop becomes automatic. Your body learns to live in the emotional state of your past, such as stress, fear, anger, or sadness, even when nothing is happening in the present. In this way, the body becomes the unconscious mind, repeating patterns without your awareness. The book explains that most people live in the familiar past rather than the present moment. Their thoughts are shaped by memory, and their emotions are conditioned responses. This creates a predictable identity. Even when people say they want change, their nervous system is attached to what feels familiar, even if it is painful. The known feels safer than the unknown. This is why change often feels uncomfortable or threatening. Another core idea is that awareness is the first step toward transformation. You cannot change what you are not aware of. The book encourages observing your thoughts, emotional reactions, and behaviors without judgment. When you notice patterns instead of identifying with them, you create distance. That distance gives you choice. You stop being your thoughts and start witnessing them. The book places strong emphasis on the present moment. The present is described as the only place where change can occur. When attention is constantly focused on the past or future, the body stays trapped in old emotional states. Learning to stay present interrupts automatic patterns and allows new neural connections to form. Presence becomes a doorway to transformation. Another major theme is emotion. Elevated emotions such as gratitude, love, joy, and inspiration are described as powerful signals to the body and brain. When you repeatedly feel these emotions, even before external circumstances change, the body begins to accept a new emotional baseline. This teaches the nervous system that it is safe to move beyond survival and into creation. The book explains that changing thoughts without changing emotions is often ineffective. You may intellectually want a new life, but if your body is emotionally addicted to stress or fear, it will pull you back into old patterns. True change requires aligning thought, emotion, and intention. When the body and mind work together, new habits can form. Meditation plays a central role in the book. Meditation is presented not as relaxation, but as mental training. Through focused attention and intentional visualization, you rehearse new ways of thinking and being. The brain cannot distinguish clearly between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. By mentally practicing a new self, you begin to wire the brain and condition the body for change. The book also discusses identity. Most people define themselves by their past experiences, roles, and labels. This identity becomes a limitation. To create a new life, you must become someone new. This does not mean rejecting your past, but loosening its grip. You step into the unknown, where the future self exists before it is fully formed. Another key idea is surrendering control. Trying to force change through effort alone often reinforces stress. The book encourages combining intention with openness. When you set a clear intention and release attachment to how change should happen, you allow new possibilities to emerge. This balance reduces resistance and builds trust. The book emphasizes repetition and consistency. Just as old habits were built through repetition, new habits require practice. Each time you interrupt an old reaction and choose a new response, you strengthen a new neural pathway. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar becomes natural. A powerful message in the book is that you are not broken, you are conditioned, and conditioning can be changed. Your past does not define your future unless you continue to emotionally live in it. When you teach your body a new emotional experience, your identity begins to shift. Ultimately, the book teaches that personal transformation is not about fixing yourself, but about remembering your ability to choose. When you stop living by default and start living by intention, you regain creative control over your life. The core message is that change happens from the inside out. When you change how you think, how you feel, and how you perceive yourself, your external life begins to reorganize around the new you. 10% happier. How I tamed the voice in my head, reduced stress without losing my edge, and found self-help that actually works by Dan Harris. This book is about finding a realistic, grounded approach to inner peace without abandoning ambition, skepticism, or everyday life. It tells the story of someone who is driven, anxious, successful on the outside, and deeply unsettled on the inside. The core message is that you do not need to become a monk, reject your personality, or lose your edge to benefit from mindfulness. You just need to understand your mind a little better. At the heart of the book is the idea that the voice in your head is not always telling the truth. Most people are constantly narrating their lives internally, replaying the past, worrying about the future, judging themselves, and reacting emotionally. This mental chatter feels automatic and unavoidable. The book shows that much of our stress and unhappiness comes not from events themselves, but from how the mind comments on them. A key theme is skepticism toward traditional self-help. The book openly questions exaggerated promises of instant enlightenment or permanent happiness. Instead, it offers a modest but powerful goal: becoming a little less reactive, a little more aware, and therefore a little happier. That 10% difference may sound small, but it has a large impact on daily life. The book introduces mindfulness not as a spiritual belief system, but as a practical mental skill. Mindfulness is described as the ability to notice what is happening in your mind without immediately reacting to it. This creates a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, you gain choice. You may still feel stress, anger, or fear, but you are no longer completely controlled by them. One important idea is that meditation is not about stopping thoughts. The mind will continue to think. The practice is about noticing thoughts as thoughts rather than facts. When you see thoughts come and go, you stop identifying with every worry or impulse. This reduces the intensity of emotions and increases clarity. The book also addresses the fear that slowing down mentally will reduce performance or ambition. Instead, it argues the opposite. When you are less hijacked by anxiety and ego, you make better decisions. You listen more carefully. You react less impulsively. You remain competitive, but with more balance and perspective. Calm does not equal complacency. Another major theme is self-awareness without self-judgment. Many people notice their flaws only to criticize themselves harshly. The book emphasizes that awareness should be paired with kindness. When you observe your patterns without shame, change becomes easier. Judgment tightens habits, curiosity loosens them. The book explains how emotions can be understood as temporary mental and physical states rather than permanent truths. Anger, fear, and craving rise and fall. When you learn to observe them, you are less likely to act in ways you later regret. This is especially useful in high-pressure environments, relationships, and decision-making. Another key point is that mindfulness is not an escape from reality. It is a deeper engagement with it. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you learn to stay present with it. This builds resilience. When you stop constantly resisting unpleasant experiences, they lose some of their power over you. The book also discusses the role of ego. Much stress comes from constantly protecting self-image, seeking validation, or fearing judgment. Mindfulness helps loosen the grip of ego by revealing how often thoughts are self-centered and exaggerated. This does not eliminate ambition, but it reduces unnecessary suffering. Humor and honesty play a major role in the book's tone. The author does not present himself as a perfected figure, but as someone who continues to struggle and practice. This makes the message accessible. Progress is not about becoming serene forever. It is about noticing when you are lost in thought and gently coming back. Another important message is consistency over intensity. You do not need long retreats or extreme discipline to benefit. Even a few minutes of daily practice can shift how you relate to your mind. Small, regular effort produces meaningful change over time. The book also emphasizes that happiness is not about eliminating negative experiences. It is about changing your relationship to them. Life remains unpredictable and challenging. Mindfulness simply helps you navigate it with less unnecessary tension. Ultimately, the book teaches that inner peace does not require a total personality overhaul. You can remain driven, curious, and ambitious while also being calmer and more present. Self-improvement does not have to be dramatic to be effective. The central takeaway is refreshingly honest. You do not become perfectly happy. You become slightly happier, more aware, and less reactive, and that small shift quietly improves everything else. The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. This book is about personal responsibility, choice, and the idea that everyday decisions shape the direction of a life. It is written as a story rather than a traditional self-help manual, using narrative to make its lessons easier to absorb and remember. The central message is that change does not begin with luck, circumstances, or talent, but with the choices you make, especially in difficult moments. The story follows an ordinary man who feels stuck, discouraged, and overwhelmed by life. Through a series of unexpected experiences, he is guided through pivotal moments in history, where he encounters influential figures who share simple but powerful principles. These principles are presented as gifts, not because they are magical, but because they are timeless truths that anyone can apply. One of the strongest ideas in the book is that responsibility is power. Many people believe responsibility is a burden, something that adds pressure or blame. The book reframes it as freedom. When you take full responsibility for your thoughts, attitudes, and actions, you stop waiting for external rescue. You realize that while you cannot control everything that happens, you can always control how you respond. This shift moves a person from helplessness to agency. Another key theme is choice. The book repeatedly emphasizes that life is shaped not by major events alone, but by small, repeated decisions. In moments of frustration, fear, or disappointment, you are still choosing how to think and act. Even choosing to give up is a decision. When you recognize that you are always choosing, you begin to choose more deliberately. The book also highlights the importance of perspective. When life feels heavy, it is easy to believe that your situation is unique or unfair. The story format helps show that struggle is part of the human experience across all eras. Great leaders and ordinary people alike have faced doubt, hardship, and failure. What separates outcomes is not the absence of difficulty, but the response to it. Another central idea is persistence. The book teaches that many people quit just before change becomes possible. Temporary defeat is often mistaken for permanent failure. By continuing to act with purpose, even when results are not immediate, momentum builds. Persistence is framed not as blind stubbornness, but as commitment to growth despite uncertainty. Attitude is another recurring lesson. The book suggests that attitude is a choice, not a reaction. While emotions arise naturally, the meaning you assign to events shapes your attitude. A positive attitude is not denial of reality, but a decision to search for possibility instead of defeat. This mindset keeps effort alive during challenging times. The book also addresses forgiveness, both toward others and toward oneself. Holding on to resentment ties energy to the past and limits growth. Forgiveness is presented not as excusing behavior, but as releasing control that past pain has over present choices. When you let go of bitterness, you regain focus and clarity. Another powerful message is the idea of service. The book suggests that meaning increases when you look beyond yourself. Contributing to others, even in small ways, gives perspective and purpose. When life becomes only about personal struggle, it shrinks. When it includes contribution, it expands. The use of historical figures in the story reinforces the idea that principles do not change, even though circumstances do. Technology, culture, and systems evolve, but human nature remains consistent. Responsibility, courage, persistence, and choice have always been the foundations of progress. The book also emphasizes the present moment. While reflecting on the past and planning for the future have value, real change only happens now. Each decision made today shapes tomorrow. Waiting for the perfect moment delays growth. Action in the present creates momentum. One of the most important takeaways is simplicity. The book does not offer complex strategies or psychological techniques. It returns again and again to basic truths that are easy to understand but difficult to live consistently. The challenge is not knowing what to do, but doing it daily. Overall, the book delivers its message gently but firmly. Life does not change because you wish it to. It changes because you decide to act differently. Responsibility, once accepted, becomes empowering rather than heavy. Choice becomes a tool instead of a burden. The story reminds readers that no one is permanently stuck. Circumstances may limit options, but they never eliminate choice. When you choose responsibility, persistence, and purpose, even small actions begin to realign your path. The core message is hopeful and grounding. You do not need extraordinary talent or perfect conditions to move forward. You need to recognize your power to choose, moment by moment. When you do, your future begins to change. The Go-Giver, a little story about a powerful business idea by Bob Burg and John David Mann. This book is about redefining success by turning a common assumption upside down. Instead of focusing on getting more, it teaches that lasting success comes from giving more. Told as a simple business parable, the story makes a powerful point. When you focus on creating value for others, success follows naturally as a byproduct, not as the primary goal. The story follows an ambitious professional who is frustrated because, despite working hard, success feels just out of reach. Through a series of conversations with different mentors, he is introduced to a philosophy that challenges everything he thought he knew about business, money, and achievement. The lessons are not abstract theories, but practical principles that can be applied immediately. At the core of the book is the idea of value. Success is defined not by how much you take, but by how much value you provide. Value is not limited to money or products. It includes time, attention, kindness, expertise, and service. When you focus on genuinely improving other people's lives or businesses, trust grows. And where trust exists, opportunities multiply. Another central idea is the importance of putting people first. Many people approach relationships transactionally, focusing on what they can gain. The book encourages a relational mindset instead. When you see people as partners rather than stepping stones, interactions become more authentic. This authenticity builds strong networks that support long-term success. The book also emphasizes the power of influence. Influence is not about persuasion or pressure. It is about placing other people's interests first. When people feel respected and understood, they are naturally more open and cooperative. Influence grows quietly through consistency, empathy, and reliability. Receptivity is another key theme. While the book focuses on giving, it also highlights the importance of being open to receiving. Some people block success by believing they must struggle alone or that receiving is selfish. The book reframes receiving as a necessary part of the giving cycle. You allow others the joy of giving when you receive openly and gratefully. The idea of authenticity runs throughout the story. Trying to be someone you are not in order to impress others creates tension and distrust. Being yourself, honestly and fully, builds credibility. People respond to sincerity far more than performance. Authenticity makes giving sustainable because it aligns actions with values. Another important lesson is long-term thinking. Short-term gains achieved through manipulation or pressure often damage relationships. The book teaches that success built slowly through consistent value creation is far more stable. Trust compounds over time, much like interest. What may feel like a small act of generosity today can create opportunities years later. The book also addresses the fear that giving too much will lead to exploitation. It makes an important distinction between giving and being a doormat. Giving is intentional and strategic. It comes from confidence, not insecurity. You give value generously, but you also maintain boundaries and self-respect. Leadership is presented as service. True leaders elevate others. They create environments where people feel supported, capable, and motivated. This kind of leadership produces loyalty and collective success rather than burnout or fear. Another key idea is abundance. The book challenges the belief that success is a limited resource. When you operate from scarcity, competition dominates. When you operate from abundance, collaboration increases. Giving reinforces the belief that there is enough opportunity for everyone to thrive. The simplicity of the story is intentional. The lessons are not complex, but they require a mindset shift. Instead of asking, "How can I win?" the book encourages asking, "How can I serve?" This single question changes how you approach work, relationships, and goals. The book also shows that success feels better when it is shared. Achievements gained through contribution carry meaning, not just reward. Fulfillment comes from knowing that your success helped others succeed as well. Ultimately, the book teaches that success is not something you chase aggressively. It is something you attract by becoming valuable, generous, and trustworthy. When your focus shifts outward, pressure decreases and clarity increases. The message is optimistic and grounded. You do not need to sacrifice integrity to succeed. You do not need to manipulate or outcompete everyone. By giving more than expected, caring genuinely, and staying authentic, you create a kind of success that is sustainable, respected, and deeply fulfilling. The Mountain is You: Transforming Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery by Brianna Wiest. This book is about recognizing that many of the obstacles standing in the way of your growth are not external circumstances, but internal patterns. The mountain in the title represents the parts of yourself that feel heavy, immovable, and overwhelming. These are not enemies to be defeated, but signals pointing toward unresolved emotions, unmet needs, and deeply ingrained habits of self-protection. A central idea of the book is self-sabotage. It explains that self-sabotaging behaviors are not random or irrational. They exist because, at some point, they served a purpose. Avoidance, procrastination, emotional shutdown, overthinking, or staying in familiar pain often developed as survival strategies. They once kept you safe, helped you cope, or protected you from disappointment. The problem arises when these strategies remain active long after they are no longer needed. The book reframes self-sabotage as self-protection gone outdated. Instead of asking why you keep failing or repeating patterns, it invites you to ask what part of you believes it is staying safe by doing so. This compassionate perspective reduces shame. When you stop fighting yourself, you can start understanding yourself. Another major theme is emotional avoidance. The book explains that many people are not afraid of failure, but of the emotions they believe failure will create. Fear, grief, rejection, or uncertainty feel unbearable, so the mind creates distractions and delays. Self-sabotage becomes a way to avoid feeling deeply. Healing begins when you learn to tolerate emotions instead of running from them. The book places strong emphasis on emotional intelligence. Learning to sit with discomfort, name emotions accurately, and allow them to pass without immediate reaction is described as a core skill of self-mastery. Emotions are not problems to fix. They are information. When you listen to them, they guide growth rather than block it. Another important idea is that identity shapes behavior. Many people unconsciously stay loyal to an old version of themselves, even when they want change. Growth can feel like betrayal to familiar identity patterns, family roles, or past narratives. The book encourages gently questioning who you believe you are and who you are allowed to become. Transformation requires releasing identities that no longer fit. The book also explores the concept of readiness. Change does not happen simply because you want it. It happens when your nervous system feels safe enough to allow it. Forcing growth through pressure often backfires. Sustainable change comes from creating internal safety, self-trust, and patience. This is why compassion, not force, is emphasized throughout the book. Another central message is responsibility without self-punishment. Taking responsibility means acknowledging your patterns honestly, not criticizing yourself for having them. When responsibility is paired with shame, it freezes growth. When paired with self-respect, it creates empowerment. You are not responsible for what shaped you, but you are responsible for how you heal. The book highlights the importance of clarity. Many people feel stuck because they are overwhelmed by vague fear rather than clear truth. When you name what you want, what you fear, and what you are avoiding, confusion begins to dissolve. Clarity does not eliminate fear, but it makes action possible. Boundaries are another recurring theme. Self-mastery involves knowing where you end and others begin. Without boundaries, people lose energy trying to manage expectations, please others, or avoid conflict. The book reframes boundaries as acts of self-respect rather than rejection. Healthy boundaries protect growth. The book also discusses intuition and inner guidance. Beneath overthinking and emotional noise, there is a quieter sense of knowing. Learning to trust this inner signal requires slowing down and letting go of constant mental control. Intuition strengthens when you act in alignment with it, even in small ways. A powerful idea in the book is that healing is nonlinear. Growth does not move in a straight line upward. There are pauses, setbacks, and repetitions. These moments are not failures, they are integrations. Each time a pattern resurfaces, you have an opportunity to respond differently, with more awareness than before. The book emphasizes that self-mastery is not about becoming rigid or emotionally invulnerable. It is about becoming flexible, grounded, and honest. Strength comes from the ability to feel fully without being controlled by feeling. Ultimately, the book teaches that the mountain is not meant to be conquered aggressively. It is meant to be climbed with patience, self-awareness, and trust. As you move through your internal resistance, you gain insight, resilience, and compassion for yourself. The message is gentle but firm. You are not broken, you are patterned. Success Mindsets by Ryan Gottfredson. This book is about understanding that success is not driven primarily by skills, intelligence, or talent, but by the mindset that shapes how those abilities are used. The core idea is that mindset determines whether people grow, stagnate, collaborate, lead effectively, or undermine themselves, often without realizing it. Success, in this view, is less about what you know and more about how you think. The book explains that mindset operates largely below conscious awareness. People often believe they are acting objectively, but their perceptions, reactions, and decisions are filtered through deeply ingrained mental frameworks. These frameworks influence how challenges are interpreted, how feedback is received, and how relationships are navigated. Without awareness, mindset quietly determines outcomes. A central distinction in the book is between mindsets that are inward-focused and those that are outward-focused. An inward mindset is centered on protecting ego, avoiding blame, proving worth, and maintaining a positive self-image. When operating from this mindset, people may resist feedback, deflect responsibility, and prioritize looking good over doing what is effective. Growth slows because learning feels threatening. An outward mindset, by contrast, is focused on impact rather than image. People with this mindset are curious, open, and responsive. They see challenges as opportunities to learn rather than as threats to identity. Feedback is information, not judgment. Responsibility is embraced rather than avoided. This mindset creates momentum because it aligns learning, accountability, and performance. The book also emphasizes that mindset affects leadership profoundly. Leaders with inward mindsets may focus on control, authority, and appearing competent. This often creates fear, disengagement, and low trust in teams. Leaders with outward mindsets focus on contribution, development, and shared success. They create environments where people feel safe to speak, learn, and take ownership. Performance improves not through pressure, but through alignment. Another important idea is that mindset influences how people respond to failure. With a defensive mindset, failure is personal and threatening. Energy goes into explaining, hiding, or minimizing mistakes. With a learning-oriented mindset, failure becomes feedback. Attention shifts to what can be improved. This response determines whether failure becomes a dead end or a stepping stone. The book also explores how mindset shapes relationships. When people are focused on themselves, they tend to misinterpret others' actions, assume negative intent, and react defensively. This creates conflict and misunderstanding. An outward mindset encourages empathy and perspective-taking. Instead of asking, "How does this affect me?" people ask, "What might this be like for them?" This shift transforms communication and collaboration. Another key theme is accountability. True accountability is not about punishment or pressure, it is about ownership. The book explains that people avoid accountability when they fear blame or judgment. When mindset shifts toward learning and contribution, accountability feels empowering rather than threatening. People take responsibility because they want to improve, not because they are forced. The book also highlights the hidden cost of fixed thinking. When people believe their abilities or status must be protected, they limit their own growth. They may avoid challenges, resist innovation, or cling to familiar methods. This mindset may feel safe in the short term, but it leads to stagnation over time. Growth requires the willingness to be uncomfortable. Another important message is that mindset is not a personality trait. It is a pattern of thinking that can be changed. Most people shift between mindsets depending on context, stress level, or environment. The key is awareness. When you notice defensiveness, avoidance, or the need to prove yourself, you can pause and choose a different response. The book emphasizes that mindset change begins internally but is reinforced through behavior. Acting with curiosity, asking better questions, listening openly, and taking responsibility all strengthen a success-oriented mindset. Over time, these behaviors reshape identity. You become someone who learns, adapts, and grows naturally. The book also addresses organizational culture. Cultures reflect collective mindset. When organizations reward image over learning, fear spreads. When they reward curiosity, honesty, and improvement, resilience grows. Sustainable success depends on creating environments where mindset supports growth at every level. A powerful insight from the book is that success mindset is not about constant positivity. It is about honesty. Seeing reality clearly, including weaknesses and mistakes, is what allows progress. Optimism without truth becomes denial. Positive intelligence: why only 20% of teams and individuals achieve their true potential, and how you can achieve yours, by Shirzad Chamine. This book is about understanding the internal forces that either support your performance or quietly sabotage it. The central idea is that success and well-being depend less on intelligence, skill, or motivation, and more on how well you manage your inner mental patterns. The book introduces a practical framework to explain why people often fail to reach their potential, even when they know what to do. At the heart of the book is the concept of positive intelligence, defined as the percentage of time your mind is working for you rather than against you. When your mind is supportive, you are calm, focused, creative, and resilient. When it is not, you are stressed, reactive, judgmental, and stuck in survival mode. Most people, according to the book, spend the majority of their time being mentally sabotaged without realizing it. A key idea is the existence of inner saboteurs. Saboteurs are automatic mental patterns that generate negative emotions and reactions. They developed early in life as protection mechanisms, often in response to stress, criticism, or insecurity. While they once helped you cope, they now limit performance and well-being. The book emphasizes that these saboteurs are not flaws. They are outdated survival strategies. The most universal saboteur is the judge. The judge criticizes yourself, others, and circumstances. It creates constant dissatisfaction, pressure, and comparison. Even when things are going well, the judge finds something wrong. This mental habit drains energy and prevents enjoyment, learning, and collaboration. In addition to the judge, there are other saboteur styles, such as the controller, who tries to manage everything to reduce anxiety, the avoider, who escapes discomfort, the pleaser, who seeks approval at the expense of self-respect, and the hyperachiever, who ties self-worth to success. Each saboteur has a distinct pattern, but all of them create stress and reduce effectiveness. The book explains that when saboteurs take over, the brain shifts into survival mode. In this state, creativity, empathy, and long-term thinking shut down. You may work harder, but with less clarity and joy. This is why effort alone does not guarantee success. Mental state matters as much as action. The alternative to saboteur-driven thinking is what the book calls the sage perspective. The sage is not a voice that criticizes or pressures. It is the part of the mind that responds to challenges with curiosity, compassion, and creativity. From this perspective, problems become opportunities to learn and innovate rather than threats to identity. The book outlines 5 sage powers. These include empathy, which allows understanding without judgment; exploration, which replaces fear with curiosity; innovation, which finds new solutions; navigation, which aligns actions with deeper values; and decisive action, which moves forward without unnecessary stress. These abilities are always available, but they are blocked when saboteurs dominate. A major theme of the book is that insight alone is not enough. Many people intellectually understand their negative patterns, but still fall into them under pressure. The book emphasizes mental fitness, which is trained through simple, repeatable practices. Just as physical muscles grow through exercise, mental strength grows through consistent practice. One of the core practices taught is learning to shift attention from thinking to sensing. When you bring attention to physical sensations, such as breath, touch, or sound, you interrupt automatic mental chatter. This grounds the nervous system and weakens saboteur control. Over time, this builds the ability to access the sage perspective more quickly. Another important idea is that positive intelligence improves both performance and happiness at the same time. Many people believe they must sacrifice well-being to succeed. The book challenges this by showing that stress and self-criticism reduce effectiveness. Calm, focus, and clarity lead to better decisions, stronger relationships, and more sustainable success. The book also highlights the impact of mindset on teams and organizations. When individuals operate from saboteur mode, collaboration suffers. Blame, defensiveness, and mistrust grow. When teams cultivate sage-oriented thinking, trust, creativity, and accountability increase. Performance improves not through pressure, but through psychological safety. A powerful message in the book is that you are not your saboteurs. They are habits, not identity. When you learn to recognize them without judgment, they lose power. Awareness creates choice. Instead of being hijacked by automatic reactions, you learn to pause and respond deliberately. The book also emphasizes self-compassion. Harsh self-criticism is often mistaken for discipline, but it actually weakens resilience. Mindsight, The New Science of Personal Transformation by Daniel J. Siegel. This book is about developing the ability to see your own mind clearly and use that awareness to create lasting change. The term mindsight refers to the capacity to perceive thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and bodily sensations as they arise without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. The central message is that when you can observe your inner world with clarity and compassion, you gain the power to transform how you think, feel, and relate to others. A core idea of the book is that the mind is not the same as the brain. The brain is a physical organ, but the mind is a process. It includes thoughts, emotions, memories, attention, and relationships. Mindsight allows you to notice this process in real time. Instead of being swept away by reactions, you begin to witness them. This shift from being inside experience to observing experience is where change becomes possible. The book explains that many people live on mental autopilot. Old patterns, emotional reactions, and beliefs run automatically, often shaped by early life experiences. Without awareness, these patterns repeat themselves, even when they cause pain. Mindsight interrupts this cycle by bringing unconscious habits into conscious awareness. Once something is seen clearly, it can be changed. A major theme in the book is integration. Integration means linking different parts of the mind and brain into a coherent whole. When experiences are not integrated, people may feel fragmented, overwhelmed, or emotionally stuck. Integration allows flexibility, balance, and resilience. The book explains that mental health is closely tied to how well different systems in the brain communicate with one another. The book also explores how past experiences shape present reactions. Early relationships and emotional environments leave imprints on the nervous system. These imprints influence how safe the world feels, how emotions are regulated, and how relationships are experienced. Mindsight helps you recognize when the past is influencing the present. Instead of reliving old patterns, you gain the ability to respond based on what is actually happening now. Another key concept is emotional regulation. When emotions are ignored or suppressed, they often intensify. When they are observed with curiosity and acceptance, they begin to soften. Mindsight teaches that emotions are signals, not commands. You do not need to act on every feeling. By naming emotions and sensing them in the body, you create space between feeling and action. This space is essential for self-mastery. The book also emphasizes compassion, especially toward oneself. Many people judge their inner experiences harshly. They criticize themselves for having certain thoughts or emotions. This judgment strengthens inner conflict. Mindsight encourages a kind, curious attitude instead. When you approach your inner world with compassion, defensive patterns relax and healing becomes easier. Relationships are another major focus. The book explains that mindsight is not only inward-facing, it also involves understanding the inner world of others. This capacity, known as empathy, strengthens connection and reduces conflict. When you can sense another person's feelings and perspectives without losing yourself, relationships become more balanced and resilient. The book highlights that mindsight can be learned and strengthened. It is not an inborn talent reserved for a few people. Practices such as mindful attention, reflection, and intentional awareness help train this skill. With practice, the brain physically changes. Neural connections strengthen, creating more flexibility and emotional balance. This demonstrates that personal transformation is biologically possible throughout life. Another important theme is the idea of choice. Mindsight does not eliminate difficulty or pain, but it increases freedom. When you are aware of your inner patterns, you are no longer forced to repeat them. You can pause, reflect, and choose how to respond. This choice is the foundation of personal responsibility without self-blame. The book also discusses identity. Many people define themselves by their thoughts, emotions, or past experiences. Mindsight reveals that these are events happening within awareness, not the totality of who you are. This realization loosens rigid self-concepts. You become less trapped by labels and more open to growth. A powerful message in the book is that healing is not about getting rid of parts of yourself. It is about integration. All emotions, even difficult ones, have a role. When they are acknowledged and integrated, they no longer dominate behavior. Wholeness comes from inclusion, not rejection. The book also emphasizes presence. Being present means experiencing life as it unfolds, rather than constantly replaying the past or anticipating the future. Presence brings clarity, emotional balance, and connection. Attached: The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love, by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. This book is about understanding why people behave the way they do in romantic relationships and how early attachment patterns continue to shape adult love. Its central message is that many struggles in relationships are not signs of incompatibility or personal failure, but the result of different attachment styles interacting with each other. When these patterns are understood, relationships become clearer, calmer, and easier to navigate. At the core of the book is attachment theory, which explains that humans are biologically wired to seek closeness and emotional safety with others. This need does not disappear in adulthood. It continues to influence how people bond, respond to intimacy, handle conflict, and react to perceived rejection. The book emphasizes that wanting closeness is not neediness. It is a basic human drive. The book identifies 3 main adult attachment styles. Securely attached people feel comfortable with intimacy and independence. They communicate their needs clearly, trust their partners, and recover from conflict relatively easily. They do not fear closeness, nor do they feel threatened by autonomy. Secure attachment is not perfection, but emotional stability. Anxiously attached people strongly desire closeness and reassurance. They are sensitive to signs of distance and may worry about abandonment. When they feel uncertain, they may seek frequent contact, reassurance, or emotional intensity. Their behaviors are often misunderstood as clingy or overly emotional, but the book explains that these behaviors are attempts to restore a sense of safety in the relationship. Avoidantly attached people value independence and often feel uncomfortable with too much closeness. They may downplay emotions, pull away during conflict, or feel suffocated when a relationship becomes emotionally intense. This does not mean they do not want connection. It means their nervous system has learned to associate closeness with loss of autonomy or emotional risk. The book emphasizes that attachment styles are not personality flaws. They are adaptive strategies learned early in life, often based on how caregivers responded to emotional needs. These strategies made sense at the time. Problems arise when adult relationships activate these patterns without awareness. A major focus of the book is how different attachment styles interact. One of the most common and painful dynamics is between anxious and avoidant partners. One seeks more closeness, the other seeks more distance. This creates a cycle where each person's behavior triggers the other's fears. Without understanding attachment, both people may feel misunderstood and rejected. The book highlights that awareness changes everything. When people recognize their own attachment style, they stop personalizing reactions. An anxious person learns that their need for reassurance is valid, but must be communicated calmly. An avoidant person learns that their discomfort with closeness is not a sign something is wrong, but a signal to work on tolerance for intimacy. Another key theme is communication. The book encourages expressing needs directly instead of through protest behaviors such as withdrawal, criticism, or emotional escalation. Secure communication involves stating needs clearly and respectfully without blaming or threatening. This reduces anxiety and builds trust. The book also challenges the myth that love should be difficult or dramatic. Many people confuse emotional intensity with passion. The book explains that secure relationships may feel calmer, especially to those used to instability. Calm does not mean boring, it means safe. Over time, safety allows deeper intimacy, trust, and satisfaction. Another important idea is that people do not need to change their attachment style overnight to have healthy relationships. Small changes in awareness, partner choice, and communication can dramatically improve relationship quality. Choosing partners who are emotionally available increases the likelihood of security. The book also addresses dating. Understanding attachment styles helps people recognize patterns early instead of repeating the same painful cycles. For example, someone with anxious attachment may be drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. Awareness allows them to pause and choose differently. A powerful message in the book is that attachment needs are legitimate. Wanting closeness, consistency, and reassurance is not weakness. Suppressing needs often leads to resentment or emotional shutdown. Healthy relationships are built when both partners' needs are acknowledged and negotiated. The book also emphasizes self-compassion. Many people feel shame about how they behave in relationships. Understanding attachment replaces shame with clarity. You are not broken. Your nervous system learned a pattern, and patterns can change. Loving What Is: 4 Questions That Can Change Your Life by Byron Katie. This book is about ending mental suffering by questioning the thoughts that cause it. The central idea is simple yet radical. It is not events, people, or circumstances that upset us, but the beliefs we hold about them. When those beliefs go unquestioned, they feel absolute and painful. When they are questioned, clarity, peace, and freedom begin to emerge. At the heart of the book is a method called The Work, which consists of 4 simple questions. These questions are not affirmations or positive thinking techniques. They are tools for honest self-inquiry. The goal is not to force yourself to feel better, but to see reality more clearly. When you do, emotional suffering often dissolves on its own. The book begins with the idea that reality is always simpler than our resistance to it. Much of human pain comes from arguing with what has already happened. Thoughts like, "This shouldn't have happened," or "They should be different," create internal conflict. The book suggests that when you fight reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. Loving what is does not mean approving of everything. It means accepting reality as it is, so you can respond wisely instead of suffering unnecessarily. The first question of the method asks whether a thought is true. This invites honesty, not quick answers. Many thoughts feel true because they are familiar or emotionally charged. Pausing to examine them creates space. The second question asks whether you can absolutely know that the thought is true. This reveals uncertainty. Many beliefs collapse when examined closely because they are based on assumptions, interpretations, or partial information. The third question asks how you react when you believe the thought. This shifts attention from the story to its impact. You notice tension, anger, fear, sadness, or withdrawal. You see how believing the thought affects your body, your emotions, and your relationships. This step makes the cost of unquestioned thinking visible. The fourth question asks who you would be without the thought. This is not a demand to eliminate the thought, but an invitation to imagine. Without the belief, there is often a sense of openness, calm, or presence. You may notice that peace does not come from changing the world, but from releasing the story about it. A powerful aspect of the book is the concept of the turnaround. After questioning a belief, you explore how its opposite might also be true, or even truer. This is not about self-blame or denial, it is about flexibility. For example, a thought like, "They don't respect me," may turn into, "I don't respect myself," or "I don't respect them." This process reveals blind spots and restores balance. The book emphasizes that suffering is deeply personal. 2 people can experience the same event and feel completely different emotions. The difference lies in their thinking. This realization brings responsibility without blame. You are not at fault for having painful thoughts, but you are the one who can question them. Another key theme is projection. The book suggests that many judgments about others are reflections of unexamined beliefs about ourselves. When you criticize someone, you are often reacting to something within you. Turning attention inward reduces conflict and increases self-understanding. The book also addresses relationships. Much relational pain comes from expectations. We believe others should behave in certain ways to make us happy. When they do not, we suffer. By questioning these expectations, relationships become less about control and more about clarity. Love becomes cleaner, without resentment or demand. A central message of the book is that peace does not require life to change. It requires perception to change. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. When you accept reality fully, you are more capable of effective action. Resistance drains energy. Acceptance restores it. The book also emphasizes kindness toward oneself. Many people judge themselves harshly for having negative thoughts. The book encourages meeting every thought with curiosity rather than condemnation. Thoughts are not enemies. They are invitations to understanding. Another important idea is that the mind creates stories about the past and future, but peace exists only in the present moment. When you question stressful thoughts, attention naturally returns to now. In the present, many problems dissolve because they were never happening there to begin with. The book does not promise that pain will never arise. It promises that suffering does not have to be permanent. Pain is part of life. Suffering is optional when thoughts are questioned. This distinction is subtle but powerful. Ultimately, the book teaches that freedom is internal. You do not need others to change for you to be at peace. You need to understand your own mind. The Four Agreements: A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom by Don Miguel Ruiz. This book presents a simple framework for personal freedom based on 4 principles, or agreements, that guide how you think, speak, and relate to others. Rooted in ancient wisdom, the message is practical and direct. The book explains that much of human suffering comes from unconscious agreements we make with ourselves and with society, often learned early in life. By becoming aware of these agreements and choosing new ones, you can reduce unnecessary suffering and live with greater clarity and peace. At the foundation of the book is the idea that humans are domesticated through reward and punishment. From childhood, we learn what is considered acceptable, successful, or shameful. Over time, these lessons become internal rules that shape identity and behavior. Many of these rules operate automatically and are never questioned. The book suggests that true freedom begins when you examine these internal agreements and decide which ones still serve you. The first agreement focuses on the power of words. Words are not neutral. They carry emotional and psychological weight. The book explains that language can be used to create truth, connection, and healing, or to create fear, shame, and division. Being careful and intentional with your words, especially toward yourself, is essential. Self-criticism and negative self-talk are forms of internal harm that quietly undermine confidence and joy. When you use words with integrity, you align your inner and outer worlds. The second agreement addresses the habit of taking things personally. The book explains that what others say and do is a reflection of their own beliefs, wounds, and perceptions, not a statement about your worth. When you take things personally, you give others power over your emotional state. By understanding that everyone lives in their own internal world, you regain emotional freedom. Detachment in this sense does not mean indifference, it means clarity. The third agreement focuses on assumptions. Much conflict and misunderstanding arise because people assume they know what others think, feel, or intend. These assumptions often go unspoken and unverified. The book encourages replacing assumptions with curiosity and communication. When you ask questions and express needs clearly, confusion decreases. Assumptions are shortcuts that save effort in the short term, but create suffering in the long term. The fourth agreement is about effort. Doing your best does not mean striving for perfection. Your best changes depending on circumstances, energy, and health. The book emphasizes self-compassion. When you do your best in the present moment, you reduce regret and self-judgment. This agreement integrates the other three. When you are imperfect but sincere, growth becomes sustainable rather than exhausting. Throughout the book, fear is identified as the root of many limiting behaviors. Fear of rejection, failure, or judgment keeps people trapped in patterns that do not serve them. The agreements offer a way out of fear-based living. By changing how you speak, interpret, assume, and act, fear gradually loses its grip. Another important theme is awareness. You cannot change agreements you are not aware of. The book encourages observing your reactions, emotional triggers, and habitual thoughts. Awareness creates a pause. In that pause, choice becomes possible. Instead of reacting automatically, you can respond consciously. The book also emphasizes forgiveness, especially toward yourself. Many people carry guilt and shame from past actions. These emotions keep old agreements alive. Forgiveness is presented not as excusing behavior, but as releasing emotional attachment to the past. When you forgive, energy returns to the present. The idea of freedom in the book is internal rather than external. Freedom is not about controlling others or escaping responsibility. It is about reducing inner conflict. When you stop believing harmful stories about yourself and others, peace increases naturally. Life may still contain challenges, but they no longer define your self-worth. Another key message is simplicity. The agreements are simple, but not easy. They require practice and patience. The book does not promise instant transformation. It offers a path. Each time you notice yourself breaking an agreement, you have an opportunity to gently return to it. Progress comes through repetition, not force. The book also highlights the importance of love over fear. Love here is not romantic emotion, but acceptance and truth. When actions are guided by love rather than fear, relationships become more honest and less demanding. You stop trying to control outcomes and start engaging authentically. Ultimately, the book teaches that personal freedom comes from responsibility without self-punishment. You are responsible for your choices, perceptions, and reactions. This responsibility is empowering, not heavy. It means you have the ability to change your experience of life from the inside out. The central message is calm and liberating. You do not need to change who you are. You need to change the unconscious agreements that limit you. When you choose clarity over assumption, integrity over fear, and compassion over judgment, life becomes lighter. The 4 agreements are not rules to follow perfectly. They are reminders. Each time you return to them, you strengthen awareness, reduce suffering, and reconnect with a sense of inner freedom that was always there. Drive: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel H. Pink. This book explores what truly motivates human behavior, especially in work, learning, and personal growth. It challenges a deeply ingrained belief that people are mainly driven by external rewards and punishments, such as money, bonuses, grades, or fear of consequences. The core message is that while these external motivators can work for simple, mechanical tasks, they often undermine motivation, creativity, and satisfaction when it comes to complex, meaningful work. At the center of the book is the distinction between 2 types of motivation. The first type is external motivation, driven by rewards and punishments. This approach assumes that people need to be pushed, controlled, or incentivized to perform. The second type is intrinsic motivation, which comes from internal desire, interest, and meaning. The book argues that intrinsic motivation is far more powerful and sustainable for most aspects of modern life. One of the key insights is that external rewards can actually reduce motivation in many situations. When people are paid or rewarded to do something they already enjoy, their natural interest often decreases. The activity starts to feel like an obligation instead of a choice. This phenomenon explains why creativity can decline in highly controlled environments and why people often disengage when their work is reduced to metrics and incentives. The book introduces 3 core elements that drive intrinsic motivation: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These 3 factors form the foundation of meaningful engagement and long-term performance. Autonomy refers to the desire to direct one's own life. People are more motivated when they feel a sense of choice and control over what they do, how they do it, and when they do it. This does not mean chaos or lack of structure. It means having ownership over one's work. When autonomy is supported, people feel trusted, and trust increases commitment. Mastery is the desire to get better at something that matters. Humans are naturally inclined to improve, learn, and refine skills. The book emphasizes that mastery is a process, not a destination. There is always room for growth. When people are allowed to focus on progress rather than perfection, motivation stays alive. Mastery requires effort, patience, and challenge, but when those challenges are meaningful, they energize rather than exhaust. Purpose is the desire to contribute to something larger than oneself. People want their work and actions to matter. When tasks are connected to a meaningful outcome or a shared mission, motivation deepens. Purpose transforms effort into contribution. The book shows that when people understand why their work matters, performance and satisfaction increase. Another important idea in the book is that motivation is context-dependent. Systems designed for factory-style, repetitive work do not translate well to knowledge work, creative problem-solving, or learning. Modern life requires flexibility, innovation, and emotional intelligence. These qualities thrive in environments that support autonomy, mastery, and purpose, not rigid control. The book also discusses education. When learning is driven by grades, pressure, and comparison, curiosity declines. When learning is driven by interest, challenge, and relevance, engagement increases. This insight has implications for parenting, teaching, and personal development. Motivation grows when people feel ownership over their learning process. A recurring theme is that control often comes from fear. Managers, leaders, and institutions may fear losing authority or predictability. However, excessive control leads to disengagement and minimal effort. The book argues that trusting people and designing environments that support intrinsic motivation leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. Another key message is that purpose does not have to be grand or abstract. Purpose can be found in helping others, improving a system, or doing work with care and integrity. When people see the human impact of their actions, motivation becomes more resilient. The book also addresses money honestly. It does not claim that money is unimportant. Fair compensation is essential. When people feel underpaid or exploited, motivation suffers. However, once basic fairness is met, more money does not necessarily lead to better performance. Beyond a certain point, meaning and autonomy matter more. The book encourages individuals to examine their own motivation. Many people unknowingly trap themselves by using reward and punishment thinking on themselves. They procrastinate, pressure themselves, or bargain with rewards. The book suggests experimenting with autonomy, focusing on learning, and reconnecting with purpose to regain motivation. Leadership is also reframed. Effective leaders are not controllers of behavior, but designers of environments. They create conditions where people can thrive. This involves clarity of purpose, trust, and support for growth. Ultimately, the book teaches that motivation is not something you force. It is something you cultivate. When people feel trusted, challenged, and connected to meaning, motivation emerges naturally. The central message is optimistic and practical. Human beings want to grow, contribute, and do meaningful work. When systems align with these needs, performance improves and well-being increases at the same time. Motivation, in this view, is not about carrots and sticks. It is about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. When these are present, drive takes care of itself. Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. This book is about what truly drives long-term success, and it challenges the common belief that talent alone is the main factor. The central idea is that grit, defined as the combination of passion and perseverance, matters more than intelligence, luck, or natural ability. Success, according to the book, is less about how fast you learn and more about how long you are willing to keep going. The book explains that talent is often overrated. While talent can give someone a head start, it does not guarantee achievement. Many talented people fail to reach their potential because they lose interest, avoid effort, or give up when progress becomes slow. Meanwhile, people with average ability but strong perseverance often outperform others because they stay committed over time. Effort, sustained consistently, compounds. A key idea is that grit involves two elements working together. Passion is about long-term interest, not short bursts of excitement. Perseverance is about continuing to work through difficulty, boredom, and frustration. Gritty people do not constantly change direction. They choose a path and stick with it, refining and deepening their commitment over years, not weeks. The book emphasizes that passion is often misunderstood. It does not usually appear fully formed or dramatic. Instead, it develops gradually. People explore, try things, get feedback, and slowly build interest. Expecting passion to appear instantly can lead people to quit too early. Gritty individuals allow passion to evolve through practice and engagement. Another major theme is deliberate practice. Improvement does not come from repeating what you already know how to do. It comes from pushing slightly beyond your current ability, receiving feedback, and correcting mistakes. This kind of practice is uncomfortable and mentally demanding. Grit allows people to tolerate this discomfort long enough to improve. The book also highlights the importance of purpose. Passion becomes stronger when effort feels meaningful. People who connect their work to a larger purpose, such as helping others or contributing to something beyond themselves, are more likely to persevere. Purpose transforms effort from a burden into a commitment. Failure plays a central role in the book. Gritty people do not avoid failure. They expect it. Failure is treated as information, not identity. Instead of asking, "What does this say about me?" gritty individuals ask, "What can I learn from this?" This mindset keeps effort alive after setbacks. The book explores how grit develops over time. It is not a fixed trait you either have or do not have. Grit can be strengthened through experience, environment, and mindset. Supportive mentors, high expectations paired with encouragement, and opportunities to struggle productively all contribute to building grit. Parenting and education are discussed as well. The book suggests that protecting children from all difficulty can undermine resilience. When children learn that effort leads to improvement, they develop confidence grounded in experience. Encouraging persistence rather than praising talent alone helps build grit. Another key idea is consistency. Grit is not about dramatic acts of willpower. It is about showing up day after day. Small efforts, repeated over time, lead to extraordinary results. Consistency turns effort into identity. You become someone who does not quit. The book also addresses the myth of overnight success. Most achievements that appear sudden are the result of years of unseen work. Recognizing this helps reduce discouragement. Progress often feels slow because growth is gradual. Grit keeps people moving forward even when results are not immediately visible. The book distinguishes grit from burnout. Perseverance does not mean pushing blindly or ignoring limits. Gritty people rest, adjust strategies, and seek support when needed. Perseverance is flexible, not rigid. It adapts while maintaining commitment. Another important message is self-belief rooted in effort. Confidence grows not from positive thinking, but from evidence. Each time you persist through difficulty, you build trust in yourself. This trust becomes a powerful motivator. The book also emphasizes that goals should be aligned. Short-term goals should support long-term ones. When daily actions connect to a larger vision, effort feels coherent rather than scattered. This alignment reduces inner conflict and increases focus. Ultimately, the book teaches that success is not about being exceptional in the beginning. It is about becoming exceptional through sustained effort. Grit is the ability to stay loyal to your future self, even when the present feels difficult. The central message is empowering. You do not need to be the smartest or most talented person in the room. You need to be willing to work, learn, and persist longer than most. Over time, that willingness becomes strength. Grit, in this sense, is not harsh or aggressive. It is quiet determination. It is choosing to continue when quitting would be easier. And that choice, repeated consistently, is what turns potential into achievement. Deep Work: Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World by Cal Newport. This book is about reclaiming your ability to focus deeply in a world designed to constantly distract you. Its central message is that the ability to concentrate without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks is becoming increasingly rare, yet increasingly valuable. Those who cultivate this skill gain a major advantage in learning, creativity, and meaningful productivity. The book defines deep work as focused, uninterrupted effort that pushes your mental abilities to their limits. This type of work creates new value, improves skills, and produces results that are hard to replicate. In contrast, shallow work consists of tasks that are easy to do, often logistical, and usually performed while distracted. Emails, meetings, notifications, and constant task switching dominate modern work life, but they rarely lead to deep satisfaction or long-term impact. A key idea in the book is that focus is not just a preference, it is a skill. Like any skill, it can be trained or neglected. When you constantly switch tasks, check messages, or multitask, you weaken your ability to sustain attention. Over time, the brain becomes conditioned to distraction. Deep work feels uncomfortable, not because it is harmful, but because the mind has lost the habit of depth. The book emphasizes that busyness is often mistaken for productivity. Many people measure their value by how responsive, visible, or busy they appear. However, activity does not equal impact. Deep work prioritizes output over appearance. It asks what truly moves the needle, not what fills time. Another major theme is the cost of distraction. Every interruption carries a hidden price. When attention is fragmented, the brain struggles to enter a state of flow. Even brief interruptions can significantly reduce the quality of thinking. The book explains that focus requires time to build. Shallow interruptions reset that process repeatedly, keeping the mind at a surface level. The book introduces the idea that meaningful work is also deeply satisfying. Humans have a natural desire to master challenging tasks and produce something of value. When work lacks depth, people feel restless and unfulfilled, even if they are busy. Deep work reconnects effort with meaning. It brings a sense of progress, clarity, and pride. Another important idea is that deep work must be scheduled. Waiting for focus to appear rarely works. The book encourages intentionally blocking time for deep work and protecting it as a priority. This structure removes the need for constant decision-making. When deep work is planned, resistance decreases. The book also addresses the myth that you must always be available. Constant accessibility feels responsible, but it undermines long-term effectiveness. The book suggests setting boundaries around communication. Reducing responsiveness does not mean neglecting others. It means being intentional about when and how you engage. A key concept is embracing boredom. The book explains that constantly filling idle moments with stimulation trains the brain to avoid stillness. This weakens focus. Learning to tolerate boredom strengthens attention. When you resist the urge to check your phone during every quiet moment, you rebuild the capacity to concentrate. The book also emphasizes the importance of quitting shallow distractions. Not every tool or platform deserves your time. The book encourages evaluating activities based on their long-term value rather than immediate convenience. Removing low-value distractions creates space for depth. Another major theme is the idea of craftsmanship. Approaching work as a craft shifts focus from external rewards to internal quality. When you care deeply about doing something well, focus becomes natural. Craftsmanship brings dignity and meaning to effort, even in challenging conditions. The book also highlights the role of environment. Focus is easier when surroundings support it. This includes minimizing digital noise, creating clear rituals, and designing spaces that signal depth. Environment shapes behavior more than motivation alone. A recurring message is that deep work is not easy. It requires discipline, boundaries, and sometimes discomfort. But difficulty is not a flaw. It is evidence that you are engaging with something meaningful. The book reframes discomfort as a sign of growth rather than a signal to stop. The book also addresses learning. In a fast-changing world, the ability to learn complex things quickly is essential. Deep work accelerates learning because it allows sustained engagement with difficult material. Shallow engagement produces shallow understanding.